Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of TimeSplitters Future Perfect. I played it on the Xbox Series X via backwards compatibility. It's also available on the Xbox Series S and Xbox One via backwards compatibility, and if you have it, PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. So let's get into the story. Once again, you play as Cortez, and you jump into another time-traveling adventure chasing a man named Crowdown. You're trying to find out what he wants with the time crystals, what he's going to do with the time crystals, and, you know, why he's so dangerous. And it, of course, leads you down a really interesting rabbit hole where you meet a bunch of wacky characters. And that's what's different about this game than the previous game, is the previous game, when you'd go back in time, you'd embody these different characters, whereas in this game, you work alongside the wacky characters. So let's get into the audio, and the first thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is suitably cheesy, but really works with the game and all the wacky characters. As for the music, I think the previous game did a better job with the music, really mixing it up, being a much more diverse soundtrack. But I do still like the music for this game. I think it works well with, you know, whatever's going on at the time. And then you've got the sound effects, which are suitably wacky and over the top, and, you know, all the different sound effects for all the different weapons, for all the different enemies. There's some really entertaining voice lines throughout. Like, if you don't go barging into every room guns blazing, you'll hear some pretty entertaining conversations. Which I guess kind of goes under the voiceover stuff, but still, either way, I love it. Now let's get into gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and once again, this is a classic first-person shooter. Not unlike the previous, there is no large interconnected map, it is mission by mission. Unlike the previous, you don't get booted out to a menu every time you beat a mission, you just go on to the next. And once again, they have a variety of guns that do function similar, like you have your pistols, you have your rifles, you have your snipers, or whatever in every level. But they will be suitably sci-fi, suitably old-timey-ish. And once again, there is multiplayer, whether it is PvP, PvE, there's the arcade mode, there's the challenges. All of that is still there, and all of that is still fun. And in fact, it is more fun than the previous game, because we're going to get into that right now in the controls. The controls are actually well-designed controls. They are much more modern FPS controls. They're not so jerky, they're not so crappy, to put it simply. This doesn't feel like a game that was designed for the N64 and then bumped up to a newer console. I mean, the controls still aren't perfect. They're not as good as modern controls, but they work so much better. It's so much more fun to play. I still wouldn't argue against a remake with better controls matching the capability of current controllers. And let's get into the graphics and visuals. And once again, this is a very cartoony looking game. It's very over the top, and again, it works very well. However, I will say it has a lot more detail in the world. Unlike the previous game, you can see the technological leaps that were taken, and it really shows in the amount of detail, the amount of character design, the amount of detail in all the different characters, the amount of details in the weapons and the way they shoot, and just the worlds in general. There's so much more detail in this game. That being said, it's still, you know, kind of rough looking because, you know, Xbox game, guys. But the cartoony aesthetic really does hold up. I think, once again, this actually still looks pretty good considering how old it is. Because again, we're talking ye olde Xbox. It's bright, it's colorful, it's got a lot of designs, and again, unlike last time, I'm going to say it right, art assets. There's a shit ton of them. It really is something that impressed me in the previous game, still impresses me in this game, maybe a little more in the previous game, but there's so many art assets. This one has way better animation though. A lot of the facial animation is really not good in the sense of, you know, realism, but good in that cartoony way that really fits with what's going on. Overall, I'm actually really impressed at how well these games have held up visually. I do think this is a good argument for how cartoonier games can hold up better. And one small visual detail I do want to point out is they actually did reflections in the mirrors, which is really impressive for the time. I know that sounds silly, but there are plenty of games on like the 360 and PS3 that didn't do that. It's one of those things that you don't think about, but it is an added little detail that I've always found impressive when they do bother to do it, because so many games have chosen not to do it. There's even like broken mirrors that will show your reflection with you moving, and they do it well. Okay, so to wrap this up, I gotta say, I was really impressed with this game. It's held up very well in so many ways. The controls are far improved. I actually had a lot more fun. It didn't feel like I was going back and, you know, playing something just for the sake of, I remembered loving it back when. So yes, I can comfortably recommend this game. Not that I would argue against, you know, a remaster of the TimeSplitters series, including this one. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, if you could time travel without it, like, fucking up everything we know now, what time would you go back to? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one. This one has some good... Fuck. Okay, so to wrap this up, I have words. I can't fucking do them right now.